Welcome to Too Fun with Books. My name is Janelle and this is a super exciting book haul video. On Tuesday, some of the stores reopened here in the city where I live, and that meant that the used bookstore reopened as well, and I was so excited. It's been closed for 2 months. And I absolutely adore hunting for books. It is one of my favorite things. Not even necessarily buying books, although I love that and I love reading. I just love the experience of hunting for books in a store because you never know what it is that you're gonna find. And I absolutely adore that, and I have missed it so much. So as soon as I found out that the store was reopening, I was there that afternoon, and I found some books. And in the same strip mall where that used bookstore is, there is also a Value Village that had reopened, and that's one of our thrift stores, and they have a fairly good section of books as well. So I went there too, and then I discovered that another very small thrift store was opening back up, and they have a fairly decent selection of books. They have a really good prices on books. Their books are $1 for paperbacks and $2 for hardcover, which is phenomenal. But I have missed book hunting, and I also really want to support our local businesses, and so I was just so excited to be able to spend some time in a bookstore again. And so I'm going to show you what I have got in this special reopening book haul. So let's get started. I found 3 books at the used bookstore. One thing that I noticed, I'm fairly familiar with the stock because I browse through there quite often, and it didn't appear that they had put out very much new or changed things up, so it was unclear to me maybe how much access they had to the store while it was closed, but that didn't matter. I still found some great stuff, and I always just enjoy browsing through that store. It is just so much fun. So one of the books that I found was W.H. Hudson's Hampshire Days. I have his book A Shepherd's Life, and I have not read it yet. But this book, the first thing that attracted to me was this cover. I quite liked this cover. But Hudson is a bit of a naturalist, and this book was first published in 1903. And on the back it says that it is a personal celebration of the delights of Hampshire, its abundant wildlife, mysterious barrows, impressive new forest, and its human characters. Hudson shares with Gilbert White the gift of making his observations in a vividly readable style. His descriptions of the behavior of a cuckoo in a robin's nest, the courtship of spiders, or the green gold brilliance of a glowworm at night are never dryly zoological. Hudson invests them with life and drama, communicating to his readers his own sense of wonder at the ingenuity and beauty of the natural world. The result is a sensuous kaleidoscope of the colors, scents, and songs of the English countryside. I've been to Hampshire. I quite like that area. I have ancestors that are from that area of England, and so I'm quite interested in this. I enjoy history more than nature, I would have to admit, and so I'm very interested to see what he has to say about what it was like in 1903, and I'm very interested in some of these characters that he meets that are in this book. And so yeah, I'm looking forward to Hampshire Days by W.H. Hudson. I also found a true crime, A Sentimental Murder by John Brewer, Love and Madness in the 18th Century. This book was published in 2004, and this is a case that I had never heard of before. The back says, last night, as Miss Ray, a lady well known for her connection with a noble lord in administration, was coming out of Covent Garden Theatre, a person came up to her and, discharging a loaded pistol close to her head, blew out her brains, of which she expired immediately. Yikes. So a London paper reported on April the 8th, 1779, of the moment when James Hackman, a young clergyman, killed Martha Ray and then tried to take his own life. In this fascinating book, John Brewer examines this shocking little scene as it was described and redescribed over the centuries. Fiction and history, it turns out, were intertwined from the beginning in reports of this sentimental murder. John Brewer is apparently a distinguished British historian, and he has won the Wolfson History Prize. He has taught at the University of Chicago, the University of California, Los Angeles, Harvard, and Yale. And he is now a professor of history at the California Institute of Technology. So yeah, I love historical true crime, and so I am very interested in getting into this book, A Sentimental Murder. And then I also found Felix Aylmer's The Drood Case. And this is a book about Charles Dickens' unfinished manuscript, The Mystery of Edwin Drood. This was published in... does it say? Hang on. (1964). And I'm just going to read this synopsis. What did become of Edwin Drood? Was he murdered? Are the terrible suspicions that accumulate against John Jasper throughout the 23 surviving chapters true? Or was it Neville Landless after all? The mystery has always fascinated Felix Aylmer. His first article on it was published in 1924. As readers of Dickens' Incognito, that's another book that he wrote, will remember, he can turn the smallest and least considered clues to immense effect. There, from a few entries in Dickens' diary, he was able to construct an almost day-by-day account of an episode in his life that Dickens had gone to fantastic lengths to conceal. I am now very interested in trying to find a copy of Dickens' Incognito, by the way. Continuing. Now he has done the same for Edwin Drood. The manuscript of Dickens' first rough notes provided a clue. The original drawings made by Charles Collins and the curious differences between them and the illustrations by Luke Fildes, which were eventually used for publication, gave another. From these fragments and from his own deep knowledge of the text and its sources, Mr. Aylmer has pieced together an entirely new explanation of the mystery, an explanation that is as convincing as it is ingenious. So yeah, that sounds really interesting to me. I am very much looking forward to delving into this, the Drood case. Then I went across the hall and visited Value Village to see what they had, and I got a number of books there as well. First up, I got another in the series, in the Amelia Peabody series by Elizabeth Peters. I'm collecting this series. I actually only have a few left to get. I love this series. It's a historical mystery series set in the very late 1800s, early 1900s, about Amelia Peabody, who is a Egyptologist, and her husband Emerson and their son Ramses. And also, can I just say, I quite like this cover. I forget what this flower is called, but I quite like that. And when you open it up, it says, "The eternal desert hides many ancient secrets. Some of them are deadly." And so when it's closed, you just see the flower, but when you open it, you can see there's a little drop of blood at the bottom of the flower. So in this episode, let us say, in the life of Amelia Peabody, for For archaeologist Amelia Peabody and her family, the allure of Egypt remains as powerful as ever, even in this tense time of world war. But nowhere in this desert land is safe, especially for Amelia's son Ramses and his beautiful new wife Nefrit. Treachery and peril are pursuing the two young lovers across the length and breadth of this strange exotic world, strengthening a bond of passion and devotion that only death can sever. And the grim discovery of a recent corpse in a tomb where it does not belong is pulling Amelia deeper into a furious desert storm of intrigue, corruption, kidnapping, and murder, and toward dark revelations that threaten to awaken the past and alter the family's destiny. So this is a book set during World War I believe. Yeah, so I was very excited to find that. I also found MMK's Death in Zanzibar. She is famous for writing The Far Pavilions, and this is a book set in Zanzibar. She wrote this in 1959. Murders multiply and romance blossoms on the island of Zanzibar, exotic setting of her best-selling novel, Tradewind. To Danny Ashton, it seems like the offer of the holiday of a lifetime when her stepfather invites her to stay on the strange and beautiful Isle of Cloves. But even before her plane takes off, Danny's delight has faded as she finds herself at the center of a frightening mystery. On her arrival at Kivulimi, the House of Shade, her unease turns to terror when she realizes that among the house guests is a dangerous and ruthless murderer. Danny doesn't know whom to trust. So, Death in Zanzibar. Awesome. I also found a Sheila Bradley. I have just a few of these, but I really like Sheila Bradley. She wrote detective books in the 70s and 80s, and this one is called The Chief Inspector's Daughter, and it was published in 1981. The Chief Inspector's daughter finds her employer murdered and introduces Quantrill to an esoteric world of romantic novels and Oriental art. So this is The Chief Inspector's Daughter by Sheila Bradley. And then I found another Susanna Kearsley. I quite enjoy Susanna Kearsley's works, and this one is Mariana, winner of the Catherine Cookson Fiction Prize. And I was debating actually with this one because I'm not a huge romance reader. I don't mind if there's a little bit of romance in the books, but I don't necessarily read romance, if you understand the distinction or get what I'm saying. But what put me over the top to actually pick this one up was the review on the back, like something out of the pages of Daphne du Maurier. So, Julia Beckett believes in destiny. When she moves into Greyweathers, a beautiful 16th century farmhouse, she suspects that more than coincidence has brought her here. The locals are warm and welcoming, especially the eligible squire of Crofton Hall. Yet beneath the ordinariness, Julia senses a haunting sadness about her new home. Then she learns of Mariana, a beautiful young woman who lived there 300 years ago. It seems history has been waiting for Julia. And then I also found The Clockmaker's Daughter by Kate Morton. I've now picked up all of her books. This was the last one to pick up, and this is her newest book, The Clockmaker's Daughter. The story of a love affair and a mysterious murder that cast their shadow across generations in England from the 1860s until the present day. In the depths of a 19th century winter, a little girl is abandoned in the streets of Victorian London. She grows up to become in turn a thief, an artist's muse, and a lover. In the summer of 1862, shortly after her 18th birthday, she travels with a group of painters to Birchwood Manor, a beautiful house on a bend of the Upper Thames. Tensions simmer, and one hot afternoon a gunshot rings out. A woman is killed, another disappears, and the truth of what happened slips through the cracks of time. It is not until more than a century later when another young woman discovers a long-forgotten sketch and is drawn to Birchwood Manor that its secrets are finally revealed. Told by multiple voices across time, this is an intricately layered, richly atmospheric novel about art and passion, forgiveness and loss, which shows us that sometimes the only way forward is through the past. Then I also found a couple of Sophie Hannah's Poirot books. I've just discovered this series fairly recently, and I believe that she's the only one who has ever received official permission from the estate of Agatha Christie to continue the books. And so this one is the Monogram Murders, and this is from This is from 2014, and I didn't double check, but I believe that this was the first one that she did. And so this is a continuation of the Poirot mysteries. And in the Monogram Murders, I'm a dead woman, or I shall be soon. Hercule Poirot's quiet supper in a London coffee house is interrupted when a young woman confides to him that she's about to be murdered. Though terrified, she begs Poirot not to find and punish her killer. Once she is dead, she insists, justice will have to be done. Later that night, Poirot learns that 3 guests at a London hotel have been murdered, and a monogrammed cufflink has been placed in each one's mouth. Could there be a connection with the frightened woman? While Poirot struggles to put together the bizarre pieces of the puzzle, the murderer prepares another hotel bedroom for a 4th victim. So I love Agatha Christie, as I'm sure you're aware, and so I'm very curious to see how Sophie Hannah handles the character of Poirot and the types of stories that she writes. I have read one of them that I remember, and that's this one, The Mystery of Three Quarters, and I did quite like it, and I did feel like she was true to the character of Poirot, but it was a number of years ago, so I'm interested to read it again. This one came out in hang on, 2018, and in this mystery, how dare you send me such a letter? Returning home one day, Hercule Poirot finds a furious woman waiting outside his front door. She demands to know why Poirot has sent her a letter accusing her of the murder of Barnabas Pandy, a man she has neither heard of nor ever met. Poirot has also never heard of Pandy, and he has certainly accused nobody of his murder. Shaken, he goes inside, only to find that he has a visitor waiting for him, a man who claimed to have received a nearly identical letter from Poirot that morning. Poirot wonders how many more letters of this sort have been sent in his name, who sent them, and why. It is precisely because he is the great Hercule Poirot that he would never knowingly accuse an innocent person of a crime. Someone is trying to make mischief and wants Poirot involved. More important, who is Barnabas Pandy? Is he even dead, and if so, was he murdered? Can Poirot find the missing link and discover the truth without putting more lives in danger? With the help of his little grey cells and the assistance of Inspector Edward Catchpool of Scotland Yard, Poirot must solve an elaborate puzzle involving a tangled web of relationships, scandalous secrets, and past misdeeds. Twisty, compulsive, and slyly brilliant, once again Sophie Hannah expertly revitalizes the most precise and charming detective of all time. So one thing I'm interested to discover is what era does she set her particular Poirot stories? I can't remember, and I'm not sure that it actually says. It might just be vaguely in the time of Poirot. So I mean, it could be the 20s, the 30s, the 40s. I'll have to read them and I'll let you know. And then I found Knight's Acre by Norah Lofts. I enjoy Norah Lofts, and I pick up her books whenever I see them. She is a historical writer from the 60s and 70s, I believe. Knight's Acre is a book from 1975, and I enjoy her writing style, and I quite enjoy historical books. So I totally just dropped it. 1 second, and I'm back. Okay, so Knight's Acre. Sir Godfrey Talboys broods in his half-finished castle on the unhorsing that shattered his knee and seems to have finished his jousting career. The raw, timbered manor he has built for his Lady Sibylla is bare of furniture, and the fields tended by his freemen show little promise. But an invitation to the tournament of a vastly rich Spanish count restores his spirits, and Sir Godfrey sets off on an adventure that will consume 6 years of his life and forge a thoughtful man out of a feckless knight. Left behind at Knight's Acre, Lady Sibylla fends for herself in a world that offers small rest or comfort for a woman come to believe her husband is dead. And then, one day, Godfrey Talboys returns, his children grown, his wife aged, and a beautiful young beauty riding beside him. And out of the deepest part of 3 hearts arises an extraordinary triumph of love. Norah Lofts sets her moving novel in the England and Spain of the Moors and the Crusades, evoking the hard and often gruesome truths of that time in her precise historical imagination. And then I found, this was very exciting because I didn't really know anything about it. This is The Flood by Ian Rankin. In 1986, a small Scottish publishing company released a first novel from a talented young writer. Only a few hundred copies were printed, but it was a literary milestone nonetheless. The book was The Flood. The author was Ian Rankin. So this is a copy of his very first published book, which I find very interesting. I really enjoy Ian Rankin's Rebus series that are set in, I think they're set in Glasgow, but I can't remember for sure. But this book is considered a coming-of-age novel and an amazing portrait of a time and place. Mary Miller has always been an outcast. As a young girl, she had fallen into the hot burn, a torrent of warm chemical runoff from the local coal mine. Fished out white-haired and half-dead, she was initially treated with I am having a really hard time with my words today. She was initially treated with sympathy, but all that changed when the young man who pushed her in died in an accident down the mine just 2 days later. From then on, she was regarded with a mixture of suspicion and fascination by her God-fearing community. Now, many years later, she is hardly less alone. She is the mother of a bastard son, Sandy, and caught up in a faltering affair with a local schoolteacher. Sandy, meanwhile, has fallen in love with a strange homeless girl, but the search for happiness isn't easy. Both mother and son are gradually being forced to come to terms with a dark secret from Mary's childhood. All this and the growing knowledge that their small dramas are being played out against a much larger canvas, glimpsed only in symbols and flickering images of decay and regrowth, of fire and water, of the flood. So I'm very excited to read Ian Rankin's first book. Then I found Eleanor of Aquitaine and the Four Kings by Amy Kelly. This is a history, and this is a Harvard paperback. According to Thomas Costain, it is a magnificent book, thorough and complete and beautifully written. I find Eleanor of Aquitaine a fascinating character, so I am really looking forward to this. Also, this had a really fascinating review on the back. The New York Times Book Review wrote, Amy Kelly writes truth for truth. When she does not know, she says so. When she guesses, she says she is guessing. She makes no attempt to fictionalize. Yet her books read like colorful romance, rich and stimulating. Because of its learning, it is a book for the historian and for the student of the Middle Ages. It is also a book for all who love a gallant woman gallantly portrayed. So, Eleanor of Aquitaine and the Four Kings. This came out in 1950. And this picture at the front is Eleanor and Henry II in the cloisters at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And the preface, I'm going to read just the first paragraph of the preface written by Amy Kelly. This account of Queen Eleanor and her century is offered as a study of individuals who set their stamp upon the events of their time, rather than as a study of developing systems of politics, economics, or jurisprudence. While it is hoped that it is conformable to what is known of institutions, it explores a different area, using many materials that the historian of institutions must perforce for reasons of brevity and clarity, leave aside, yet which are a part of the tradition that is a history in a wide sense. So I am interested in the fact that she is writing about people as opposed to events. That should make for a very interesting history. And I also found another very interesting history. This is Gunpowder, The Players Behind the Plot by James Travers. I find Guy Fawkes and the Gunpowder Plot a fascinating piece of history, and this book, I like how the premise of this book, how he chooses to tell this story. Guy Fawkes, James I, Shakespeare, Ben Jonson, Robert Catesby, just the more well-known names among the wider cast of an astonishing real-life drama, the 1605 Gunpowder Plot. 400 years later, the historian James Travers tracks the twisting powder trails and illuminates the darker recesses of the plot in a pacey and vividly detailed reconstruction. Underpinned by evocative letters and documents, some published for the first time, Gunpowder dissects the origins of bonfire night in a literate and highly readable way. And this is a book put out by the National Archives. And I just think it's so interesting. It was first published in 2005. In a fascinating mixture of original documents, pithy narrative, colorful character portraits, and cultural allusions, Gunpowder tells the story of that most audacious attempt in 1605 to destroy the existing social and political order. And Guy Fawkes was just one member of the drama's huge cast. Taking its cue from the period's glorious theatrical heritage, Gunpowder casts the succession of events as acts rather than chapters, bringing to life the unfolding events and the key players, from the handsome and charismatic ringleader Robert Catesby to the wealthy darling of the court Sir Everard Digby and King James himself, a man already well versed in plots. Act 1 follows the plotters' final preparations up to the discovery of Fawkes with the gunpowder. Act 2 moves to the Midlands, where the plotters try and fail to foment rebellion while interrogations and torture take place in London. Act 3 tracks the government's attempt to unravel the plot and to contain the rebellious ripples it continued to cause. Portraits, engravings, and many previously unpublished letters and official documents, including confessions signed by the plotters, are reproduced throughout. So I love history, and I think this is a fascinating moment in history. So let me see if I can show you any other interesting reconstructions here. This is a letter written from Antwerp by William Tresham, and he observes that the patronage of Spain could not be relied upon. Let's see. Ooh, this is a portrait of Francis Bacon. Anyway, yeah, so I was really excited to find this, and I am looking forward to learning more about this particular episode in history. And then I visited the Log House Tavern, where I found Elizabeth I, a biography by Anne Somerset. And this one was intriguing to me for a number of reasons. One, I love that time period, the Tudor time period, and specifically Elizabeth I. I find that very fascinating. And so in this book, Anne Somerset authoritatively examines her domestic and foreign conflicts, her sexuality and her religion, unraveling the complexities of Elizabethan politics and bringing alive the glamour and excitement of the Tudor court. So I'm always interested in biographies and information about Elizabeth I. So for that reason alone, I would read this. But then I read the review from the Times Literary Supplement on the back that says that this is the fullest and best biography of the Queen since Sir John Neale's in 1934. And I find that so interesting because when I came home and checked, I discovered that I have this 1934 biography of Queen Elizabeth I by J.E. Neale. And so I want to read these two books close together and see their similarities and their differences. This book was awarded the James Tate Black Memorial Prize in Biography, and it has stood as the classic and authoritative biography of the great queen. And there is a review from the London Times Literary Supplement that says, J.E. Neal's Unrivaled Queen Elizabeth, a classic of scholarship presented in a form which made it immediately and justly popular with a large public, a public which has moreover been continually extended and renewed in the intervening years. So, I will be very interested to see the similarities and differences in these biographies, what they choose to focus on, what they say and don't say, maybe. And so, yeah, I'll let you know how that goes. But that is my reopening book haul. I'm so excited. I am so glad that I can go book hunting again, and I'm really excited. I found some great books here. Have you read any of these books? If you have, I'd love to hear about it in the comment section down below, and I will see you for another video soon. Bye.